All right. Hello and welcome to Around the Horns, a show where we are talking about the University of Texas baseball program. And today we are talking about the NCAA baseball regionals and the postseason. Before we get started, I wanted to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Pint House Brewing. They've got a new deal over there for the Orange Bloods members, which is very exciting. So basically, if you go into the Pint House over on East Bend White Boulevard and you order a Texas Wagyu smash burger, they will give you $3 off of your burger just for being an Orange Bloods member. If you just go to the Orange Bloods site and you find, one of the pinned posts with Pint House, that you can pull up a coupon, and if you show that to anyone there, you will get $3 off. So pretty exciting deal that you can get over the next couple weeks throughout the baseball postseason. There over at our sponsor Pint House. Zach, have you ever had this specific burger? You think this is a good deal? You can see yourself taking advantage of.
Very good deal, and the food at Pine House is legit. Plus, you get yourself a burger, spend an extra $3 on an electric jellyfish, and you're golden. So
there you go. Yeah, you take the $3 you save from the burger, and there you go. That's how it works over here. Zach, we've got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, the bracket is out. This is our favorite time of the year. There are 64 teams set to compete for the national championship. Only one will come out on top. We will see who that will be in a couple weeks. Today, we're going to be talking about the regional. Specifically, we will be talking about the Coral Gables regional, where, of course, that is where the Texas Longhorns will be headed. We are going to, we'll talk briefly about the Big 12 tournament, what kind of went wrong there. We will talk about all the teams in this regional, the opposing super regional matchup. We've got all kinds of stuff to get into, what Texas has to do to try to claw their way through Coral Gables. Zach, we got a lot going on. Any opening remarks and overall thoughts? I know you are headed to Miami this weekend. Are you feel like this is a pretty it's worked out pretty well for you, pretty good destination there?
Yeah, we were joking around before the announcement yesterday of, are we going West Coast, or are we going East Coast, where are we going? And then we got a chance to talk with Coach Pierce right before. We said, Coach, are we going to Indiana State? Because you can't send me to Terre Haute, please. Like, just don't do it. And he goes, look, y'all can go to Terre Haute, but I'm not going to be there. And I was like, all right, cool, we're not going to Indiana State. So yeah, no, it'll be fun. A little Miami trip. And that of course led to quite a few jokes yesterday about when we're talking with the team about, hey guys, have you ever heard of the song Welcome to Miami by Will Smith? And of course we got a lot of blank stares and what the heck is that? Shout out to my man Eric Kennedy. He's the only one that came through in the clutch. Was like, yeah, of course I know the song. So thank goodness we got one old man in the crowd that knows what that song is, but I'm sure they'll hear plenty of it very, very soon.
Eric Kennedy is in fact the oldest man in that clubhouse, so it does make sense there. But yeah, I mean, so the national seeds came out. Miami is the number 9 overall national seed. The 2 seed in that region is none other than the Texas Longhorns. The 3 seed is University of Louisiana Lafayette, and then the 4 seed is Maine. That, of course, means Texas will be matched up with Louisiana. They will be playing at 1 p.m. Central on Friday. The game will be available on LHN, which is pretty exciting. We will not have Swindell and Moreland on the call. They'll probably have other assignments, but it's going to be a simulcast of whoever the main broadcast team is. But that will be exciting. The game will be available on the ESPN app and on Longhorn Network for those trying to watch on Friday, as we will be. Zach, it was a pretty interesting draw. And I think the other important thing to mention is the opposing super regional, got a long way to go should he get that far, is Stanford as the number 8 seed, which of course A&M is the 2 seed that ended up getting sent out west. So, what was your first reaction when you saw that Texas was heading to Miami, and then the game 1 matchup versus Louisiana? I'll let you kind of dive into some of the Coral Gables nuggets you got jotted down here, and anything anywhere else we want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stanford was kind of the betting money going into it. There was an inkling, a little rumor going around that it might be the Miami regional, an hour or so before the announcement, which was interesting. But I really like the regional. Nothing to take away from Maine. They've played basically 0 quadrant 1 teams or top 50 teams, right? But if you look at Miami, you look at Louisiana, and look at Texas, this realistically could go any different way, right? If someone has a bad day, they're in a lot of trouble, because trying to beat these teams, they're all 3 are tough teams. And so I think it's a tough draw, but I also think it's a really good draw for Texas. So I don't hate it at all. And then, yeah, as you stated, going out west, Stanford, that's a kind of a fun regional because they're the only team west of what Oklahoma State is the furthest west outside of Stanford, which is insane. But then you have 3 Cal teams and then randomly Texas A&M. So, of course, Texas A&M does not fit out in California whatsoever. They're going to be the complete yokels of Palo Alto, which is going to be great. But, a San Jose State team, which Texas obviously saw and, beat the lights out of in 2 games, although they lost that Friday night game. And, Braden Montgomery, he's still an electric athlete. So it's a really good regional out there. I think, Texas A&M, as much as I like to give them a hard time, the way they're playing, the way they're pitching right now, they can come out of that regional very easily with a win. So,
yeah, no, I mean, my first reaction when I saw the draw was, not bad for Texas. I was thinking, college baseball is super unpredictable. I'm sure this statement will go up in flames, but there seems to be sort of like a top 5 or a top 6 that's pretty definite this year. If you look at Wake Forest, Florida, Arkansas, Clemson, and then I think I'm forgetting LSU. Those are the teams that I was thinking, and you can throw Vanderbilt in there as well after winning the SEC tournament. If you can get to Omaha without having to beat any of those teams, that's about as good as you can ask for as a 2 seed. I mean, and not to mention Miami, they've got a lot of experience. Their home crowd isn't the craziest. Stanford, they've been to Omaha back-to-back years. Home crowd, not the craziest if you end up having to go there. So you avoid, the top 5, 6 real powerhouses this year. You avoid playing in a, raucous environment. Not much more you can ask for if you're a Texas team that has to go on the road and try to win a regional and then a super regional. But, we're a long way away from that. Let's talk a little bit more specifics. Let's get into Louisiana first. They were one of the last teams into the tournament, which is always interesting to note because, Texas was just waiting to see where they were going on Monday. Meanwhile, Louisiana, they were sweating. They were sweating bullets over there, just making sure they were in the tournament. They do end up getting sent to Miami to face Texas. They were 40-22 this year. They were only 18-12 in the Sun Belt. The RPI was 47. It's an interesting matchup because they're not a team that's going to hit a lot of homers. But the one thing that really stuck out when I was doing my first bit of research on Louisiana, Zach, they are 3rd in the entire country in stolen bases, which is, I know, is something that teams have tried to do against Texas this year. So they've got 161 steals, 5 different guys that have over 17 steals. So if there's a guy on base, there's a good chance he might be looking to run. Garrett Gilmet, he's done a good job holding down the running game this year. We expect him to catch pretty much every single game in the regional this weekend. So that will definitely be something to keep an eye on. They don't hit very many homers. They only have 66 homers on the year, but it's a team. They're going to try to play a little small ball. They're going to try to execute. They're going to try to find ways to get on base. Their walk percentage isn't out of control. They do strike out quite a bit, which is something the Texas pitchers and, Lucas Gordner, LBJ, we're going to get into that later, something they might be able to take advantage of. And then on the pitching side, if you just look at their overall stats, it's nothing crazy. They've got an overall staff ERA of 4.79. That's 54th in the country. Their fielding independent pitching is all the way down at 133rd in the country. There's nothing that jumps off the page when you look at Louisiana, but they're a solid team that has been able to win games. They get on base, they steal, they find ways to move guys over and get guys in. So that was kind of my first reaction when I was looking into this Indiana team. What do you want to add there when we're talking about, University of Louisiana Lafayette?
Yeah. So one of the first things the moment it was announced that Louisiana was going to be pairing up with Texas, I had all my buddies from Lafayette message me going, Raging Cajuns bah. So it's always fun when a bunch of your friends are from Lafayette or, from an area where they have a team that they face off against Texas because, they're not unfamiliar with Texas. They've played a number of times, right? Texas has a 33-8 record all time against Lafayette or Louisiana. I still call them La, to be honest. Taking it back, but it's a team that has Matt Deggs at the helm, and you know what you're going to get from Matt Deggs. You're going to have a very fundamentally strong defensive team that's aggressive offensively. So they're very consistent, right? If you look at the teams that made the NCAA tournament, and you look at Louisiana, who they've actually played quite a few teams. So they played Campbell, went 1-2. They played Tulane, went 1-0. That's not really saying much considering Tulane lost 40 games. They went 1-2 against Troy. a big midweek win they got against LSU at the box. So they won that game 8-5. They went 1-2 against Coastal Carolina. They swept Texas State 3-0 in the series, and then they beat them twice again in the conference tournament. And then they went 1-2 against Southern Miss. So if you look at the overarching picture of them, you think this is a pretty decent team that just doesn't have the ability to really go deep. But if you start looking at the micros, yeah, they're a team that can beat you on any given night. Absolutely. I mean, they've won again a midweek game against LSU. They've got a potent offense. I think you had it marked down, 6 guys above 900 on their OPS.
Yep, 6 different guys with the OPS over 900. So, they just find ways to get on base. They don't hit that many homers, but yeah, keep going.
They're super productive, right? So you look at their leadoff guy, Kyle DeBarge, 370 batting average, 6 home runs. Like you said, not a ton of power, but his on-base percentage is 449, and he's stolen 17 bags. Heath Hood, 336, 6 home runs, 420 on base. He's stolen 35 bags. So you just go down the list and you're like, okay, these guys can run, they're athletic, and they play solid defense. And that's typically what you're going to want out of a team. Now, their pitching has been hit or miss at times. They obviously went on a run during the Sun Belt Fun Belt tournament to get to even be an at-large. So, I think they have the pieces to be really, really dangerous in that game one. At the same time, in a regional format, teams get weird, right? Like they get real tight, or they could be playing very, very loose because they have nothing to lose. But it'll be a tough matchup for Texas, I think. The equivalent from my mind is what Texas saw last year against Louisiana Tech in the regional. You've got a team that plays really solid defense and they can hit. It's how well do you get to their pitching staff? If you can get to their pitching staff, you're fine. If you can't, and you let their starters go deep, you're going to get in trouble. It's going to be a very, very tight game. So,
yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting there when you were talking about the offense. It's just an offense that they'll put pressure on you. They're not going to give you that many easy innings. They're not going to blast a bunch of homers, but they're going to make you work for all the outs. Some of the games I was watching when I was looking into them, looks like they normally roll out 5 right-handed hitters and 4 left-handed hitters. So they're pretty balanced in that regard. No big advantage there one way or another.
Yeah.
And where I think that could be a potential issue for Texas is when you just talk about a team that grinds out at bats and, finds ways to get on bases. Texas is going to need Lucas Gordon or LeBaron Johnson Jr. to go deep into this game. And this is a team that profiles as a team that's going to grind out some really good at bats, that's going to find a way to get on base and extend innings with 2-out hitting. So in that regard, it's going to be tough for Lucas Gordon or LeBaron Johnson Jr. to be able to go 7-8 innings that, we're going to talk about the pitching staff later, but they need Lucas Gordon and LeBaron Johnson Jr. to go deep into these games. And, it's not going to be enough just to dominate for 5 innings. They're going to need 7 or 8 from these guys if they're going to want a realistic shot to get out of this regional. So that's what kind of jumps to my mind when I'm hearing about their offense and looking into those numbers. When you talk about the Louisiana pitching staff, this time of year, the regionals, you never know exactly who a team is going to throw out there. They could ride a hot hand. They could change up in what they're doing. They could, look more into the matchups. So we don't know exactly who Louisiana is going to throw out there. We will talk about Jackson Nezu, who has been their Friday night guy for pretty much most of the season. He's 9-5. He's got a 6.14 ERA, but he's pitched a little better than that would reflect. 1.34 whip and 95 strikeouts. He's actually a transfer from Florida State. I was watching him this morning. He's a righty, 91, 94, pretty clean and simple mechanics, nothing crazy, nothing out of control, just kind of your standard righty. He likes his changeup. He will definitely show a changeup to lefties, and he'll flip in a curveball early in the count. It's nothing really that's going to blow you away. He's just kind of a guy he's going to attack with his fastball. He's going to try to pitch with his fastball on both corners, and then he's going to mix in a changeup and a curveball. There wasn't really anything that jumped out the page. He's just kind of a solid guy, a reliable guy that they can run out there. It's not a guy that I, think Texas can't handle. I think it's a guy that Texas could potentially jump on, and that would be big if they are able to do. Looking at the stats, their best reliever this year was probably Cooper Rawls. He's got a 3.66 ERA. He's made plenty of appearances. They can stretch him out. They can, run him out there for 2 or 3 innings, which, they're going to be very aggressive with their pitching staff in game 1 of the regional, obviously. Blake Marshall in the conference tournament, he gave them a big outing against Coastal Carolina. So if they're going to look to ride the hot hand, he's the guy they could potentially run out there. But Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's not a pitching staff that's going to intimidate Texas. If, it's just going to depend on which Texas offense kind of shows up to play. If it's the one that showed up ready to go and, pissed off against West Virginia, I could see Texas tagging this pitching staff, 4, 7, 8 runs and giving Texas a good chance to win. But if the bats kind of come out a little bit asleep and the slump from Arlington carries over, these guys are going to throw strikes. They're going to be able to attack the zone. They're not going to just serve up that many meatballs. So it's going to be up to Texas there on the offensive side. But yeah, I mean, it's not a horrible matchup. It's not like, Texas ran to a 3 seed that has some juggernaut ace, which would have been the worst case scenario. So that's not really what we're going to see here with Louisiana on the mound, at least.
Yeah, I think for me, from the pitching standpoint, Louisiana's beaten folks like Coastal Carolina, who has an enormous offense, very, very much respect and love that offense that Coastal's running. So yeah, if again, to your point, if Texas can get in there and dig in and get some quality at bats early, I think they stand a really good chance. Again, they're not seeing some lefty that's a real crafty guy. They're seeing a hard throwing righty. That somewhat plays into what Texas likes to do, right? So if you look at his field independent pitching, if you look at his xFIP, if you look at Sierra, none of the numbers really throw out that hey, this is the guy that can come in and just absolutely lock you down. But they do have some guys that can really stretch out, that can maybe go to early and often and keep Texas off balance. So it really does depend on how Deggs wants to play it. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's a winnable game, but it's it's a team that if you don't come out executing, playing well, and you're not in your game, they're going to beat you. That's just kind of how they make their money. So we will see how that goes at 1:00 on Friday. I want to talk a little bit about the host team, the University of Miami Hurricanes. Zach, that is a potential matchup there in game 2 for the Longhorns if Texas were to win, and we expect Miami to take care of business against Maine. Number 9 overall seed, number 12 RPI. I believe they were the 4 seed in the ACC conference tournament. ACC, very good this year. They were a host last year. They've been a postseason team year in and year out. I'll let you get into some of the more details, maybe a little bit of the offense, and then we will talk about some of the guys that Texas could potentially see on the mound there in a game 2.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the 12 RPI. They've got 16 quadrant 1 wins. They also have 13 quadrant 1 losses. They did go on a run, as you said. They're 40-19 on the year. And they played in a very tough ACC where everyone was just beating up on each other. They're really good at home. They're 28-5. And that's not what you necessarily have seen from Miami in years past, because they don't have a crowd. Like they host, I think, just under 5,000 seats. And it's never been a crowd that's really packed the stadium and been super loud. Even Coach Damare talked about it in his interview or the day before yesterday. He's like, look, we really need people to get out here and be loud. He's like, we're playing at home for a reason, right? We're a good team, but we got to get the crowd behind us. What was interesting is the kind of the run they went on in the ACC tournament, beating NC State, Duke, Wake Forest. They fell to Clemson, who's just one of the hottest teams in the nation right now. But they showed that, hey, they can put together back-to-back games. And you'll talk about the pitching here in a moment. But what's interesting about that is, from a pitching standpoint, they've had injuries and they've had to kind of mix and match pieces all year long. They haven't had really dedicated roles outside of 1 or 2 guys. And so they really are a team that's kind of been multiple from a pitching standpoint. You look at what they've done from a conference or from an NCAA perspective of teams making it. They beat Indiana State in the sole game they played them. They went 1-2 against Florida. They went 2-1 against NC State, 0-3 in the regular season against Wake Forest, 0-3 against Virginia, but then they beat UNC in a series 2-1 and beat Duke in the series 2-1. So look, they're a solid team, but their pitching staff is where their big weakness is. And if you can get to the pitching staff, you can beat them. They have a lot of veterans on the team. This is a team last year that lost, as you mentioned, the regional in Coral Gables to eventual champion Ole Miss, who was the very last team to make the NCAA tournament. Hey, maybe Louisiana's that team. They're one of the last teams in. They just make that magical run. Maybe, you never know. But what you've seen from this Miami team is they're much better than they were last year. Defensively, their shortstop can really pick it. Offensively, they've got Yo-Yo Morales, who's one of the top 3 or 4 all-time hitters for Miami, which is saying something from their history and legacy. But they've also, one of the things that, and we'll get to picks later on, but one of the things that I think stands out about Miami is they've been really, really good in late games. They've come up with a clutch hit. They've come up with a big hit to help win in that game. Because they've trailed late going into a lot of games. So that could very much come into a factor as the game gets late. We know what struggles Texas has had late in games. We know that Miami's been good. Louisiana, maybe not as good. They're kind of just run of the mill. So something to watch out for. But, these are two teams, Miami and Texas, that have been to number 1 and number 2, the most appearances in the College World Series. So this is a lot of history riding on this series too.
Yeah, no, I mean, you talk about them being good in close games. There's another reason for that we are going to get to here pretty soon. But if you look at just this Miami team overall, they're a much more powerful team. That obviously it's Miami. They recruit well. They've got a bunch of super talented and electric kids. Their number, the offense as a whole, they're 9th this year in home runs with 110 homers on the year. They're going to slug it quite a bit. They've got a .515 team slugging percentage. That's 25th best in the country. And then you look at the pitching staff. They strike out a lot of people and they don't walk that many people, which is a pretty dangerous combination. 25.3% K rate, that's 17th best in the country. And then only a 9.1% walk rate, that's 34th best in the country. When you combine that overall strikeout to walk ratio, that's a 10th best ratio in the entire country. They do still have an ERA over 5, which means they're going to give up some hits. Of course, that was in the ACC where there are a bunch of good offenses in the ACC. So that doesn't mean it's a bad pitching staff by any stretch, but yes, those are some of the overall numbers there. Zach, the one thing I wanted to look into is we know that Miami is the 1 seed in this scenario. A lot of times in the regional, if a team has a set ace, kind of a set Friday night guy, and they're the 1 seed and they're playing against a team like Maine, who you would expect Miami to be able to handle regardless of who's on the mound. The 1 seed will often save their ace in game 1 to pitch their ace in game 2 in that pivotal 1-0 winners bracket game that more often than not decides who's going to win the regional. And I wanted to see if that was something that might come into play this weekend, because of course, if Texas does advance past Louisiana, that's probably going to be against Miami. I wanted to know who's potentially going to be on the mound. So I went back and looked at what Miami did last year in a similar scenario. As you mentioned, Miami was a host. Ole Miss was there. They eventually went on to win the College World Series. But last year in this same scenario, Miami did in fact save their Friday night guy for the second game. It got a little bit hairy for them in game 1. The guy who they ended up starting in the regional opener against the 4 seed, he got roughed up a little bit and they ended up having to use a lot of pitchers. Miami did end up winning the game, and then they went on to pitch their ace in game 2 against Ole Miss, and they did lose. But that is something that, this coaching staff has been willing to do. So I think that's probably what they might do again. We will see. You never know for sure. But lately, they don't have like a set ace that they've gone to every single time. But lately, their Friday night guy has been Gage Zeal. I was watching him this morning. He's 7-4, 4.61 ERA. He's got a whip of 1.27. His fastball, it can vary quite a bit. I saw him throwing 90, 91, but he also can get it all the way up to like 95, 96. He's a sophomore. He's a righty. Another righty, just pretty clean, standard mechanics, nothing crazy, over the top arm slot. Pretty much a standard power righty. He's got a really strong changeup that he liked to throw quite a bit. He wasn't just throwing it to lefties. He was throwing it to righties as well. And then he mixed in a slider that was pretty tight, and he would throw that to righties and to lefties. He was actually using the slider as a put-away pitch against lefties as opposed to the changeup. He seemed like he was more comfortable throwing that changeup early in the count, and then he'd go to that slider to maybe back foot it to put people away. So he's solid, man. They ran him out there against North Carolina State. He had a pretty impressive outing. He's going to come at you with the fastball pretty often. He'll mix in the changeup early in counts. He'll mix in the slider. I think that is who Miami is likely going to try to save for game 2. We don't know for sure. These teams can do anything in a regional, but I think that's the main possibility. But Zach, we are bearing the lead here. The main guy that we need to talk about is the 2-time All ACC All American closer, the righty Andrew Walters. Zach, this guy is a nightmare. You think Landon Sims gave Texas problems in Mississippi State, on a lesser extent, you think of what Tyson Neighbors did to Texas a couple times this year. That is Andrew Walters, and he's closer to the Landon Sims side of it. Yeah, it's out of control, Zach. He's got 11 saves this year. He's got a 1.08 ERA. His whip is ridiculously low. I'll pull it up here, but I think it's like 0.7 or something. He's got 68 strikeouts. He's got 7 walks. Was watching him, man, he's just going to come at you with the fastball. And it's not always like 98, 99. It's, he can start at 93, 94. He can get it up to 96, 97 when he really wants to, but he spins it really, really well. If you think of like a Christian Javier type of fastball that just stays on its plane really well, it has no drop. It looks like it's rising, and it gives the hitters fits. You beat it into the ground, you pop it up in the air. It's really hard to barrel, and he will just come at you over and over and over with the fastball. And then he's got a really good slider to pair with it whenever he wants to go with it. This is a potential disaster for any team trying to beat Miami in this regional, because when I think of a regional format, a dominant closer reliever that can pitch, 3 to 4 innings at a time, which Walters can do, that is like the number one thing that an opposing team does not want to see in a regional. Like if a team wants to have a weapon in a regional, it would be a guy like Andrew Walters that could come in and just slam the door for multiple innings in multiple games in a regional, which that is just a scary proposition where if you play Miami, you need to get a lead early, because if you don't have a lead when Andrew Walters comes into the game, you are probably not going to win. That's how it's been.
Yeah. Andrew Walters has been just ridiculous, right? Like you mentioned his ER, or his whip is 0.76, by the way.
Yeah.
You look at his FIP, or his field independent pitching, he's 2.87. Anything below 3 is considered excellent. His xFIP is even lower, 2.78, and his SIERA is 0.63. Like the dude is electric. And I was talking to Joe Healy from D1 Baseball about Miami, because he's seen him a bunch of times. He's like, look, the numbers are not just numbers. He's like, this guy is legit the number 1, if not number 2 reliever in all of college baseball. He's gonna be first team All-American again. He's a 2-time All-ACC first teamer. He said he pitches in the high 90s, but he said the way his arm action is, it carries so much. He's like, it looks like it's 105 out of his hand. He's like, you have no time to react. He said the breaking ball is really nasty as well. So he's like dropping in a 95 mile an hour fastball, which is the main pitch. Like he's probably an 80-20 guy, right? But he'll hit fastball and hit you with a slider, and there's zero chance. And we all know what Texas does against sliders at times that are plus, and it's not good. So yeah, Walters is the guy that Miami's going to go to early and often. I was looking at the last year's regional, and he got used in 2 of the 3 games. And so he's not a guy that's just going to go out and pitch and you're not going to see him. Like you're going to see him multiple times if you go deep. So, that's some of the other notes around them was, look, the rotation is kind of average at best.
Yep.
Gage is a good guy. He has a good arm. Alejandro Rosario has a huge arm. He can run it up just 95 after 95 after 95 after 95, but he doesn't have a lot of shape and movement on it. So he's very, very hittable. The other kind of like X factor, which Coach Gino from Miami was very happy about, you could see, was they're getting Carson Ligdon back. He missed almost a month early in the season. Then he missed another month with some shoulder inflammation. He's finally back. Apparently his changeup hasn't been very good, but his velocity has been maybe a tick right below where it was. And so, you're going to see a mid-90s righty that has good velo. But if his changeup's bad, you got to think maybe he's not the guy to go to in game 1, which is the guy that did pitch game 1 last year. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Based on what happened last year in the regional, I think it makes sense to go with maybe Rosario is their game 1 starter against Maine. I could also see Gino going, look, we saw what trouble we ran into last year. Let's get the first win out of the way. We know that we have Walters if we need to, bulk Rosario and Carson back to back, and then bring in Walters to shut it down. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. Like I said, I do know that Carson is going to pitch this weekend though. So they do have their kind of full complement of weekend arms. We'll see what happens, but yeah, they've got a staff that if you can get to, you can win, but you got to get to them still.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is going to be like pretty much the only key to the game. If Texas does play Miami in that 1-0, it is going to be score early, score runs on the starter, and get a lead. Because if the game is tied or Texas is losing by 2 or 3 runs when Andrew Walters comes in the game, it's not impossible. He has a 1.08 ERA. I guess technically that is not a 0 ERA. I think he has allowed 4 homers this year. So maybe Garrett Gilmet can just ambush a fastball and send it over the yard. We've seen that this year, but more than likely, if Andrew Walters comes into the game with a lead in the 6th or the 7th inning, it's going to be curtains. That's just kind of how it goes with him on the mound. So if that matchup does come, man, the key is going to be score runs in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd inning before they have a chance to bring this guy in with a lead. Zach, you can mention Maine if you want to. I do not have any hot takes on Maine. I do not think they're going to beat Miami, but anything that jumped off the page, if you just kind of look at their resume.
Look, the Fighting Jeremy Pena's. Put some respect on the Maine Bears, all right?
Yep.
No, I mean, they're riding a 7-game win streak. They play in the America East. They won the auto bid over Binghamton, which ironically is my wife's home team. So I have to root against Maine at this point. No, just kidding.
Oh boy, you have to root against Maine.
No, like if honestly, Maine is one of those teams that you probably never have paid attention to or heard of.
Nope.
If you go look at their history, they've been in the College World Series 7 times. 7 times.
Wow, didn't see that coming.
There's a lot of teams that cannot claim that, right?
Yeah.
The thing that jumps off the page though is their quadrant 1 wins 0. They're 0-3. Quadrant 2 wins 2-1. Quadrant 3 0-0. Quadrant 4 29-15.
Sweet spot, baby.
Sweet spot. I looked at some of their power numbers, right? So they got a guy named Jenkins. He's hitting 378 on the year with a 1.22 or 1.277 OPS. He's hit 20 home runs and 75 RBIs. And I was like, are they playing like Little League? Legitimately, they have like a knee-high fence in left field and right field. So everything that you hit is just over the fence. It's insane. So I mean, they've got a couple of good hitters. Their pitching staff is not terrible numbers, but they're playing quadrant 4 teams, so I would hope that they're not bad, right? The 3 main guys are left-hander Caleb Lees, right-hander Noah Lewis, and then right-hander Colin Fitzgerald. They've got a freshman that's been really good out of the pen, and Gianni Gambardarella. Sure, I just butchered his name, so congratulations, Maine. Yeah, I don't see them giving Miami any fight. The only other interesting aspect is that Maine and Miami both have the old English script M, so it's the battle of who can keep the logo. If you lose, you got to go find a different M. It's all there is to it.
Well, I mean, if they beat Miami, you think Miami's actually just going to give up their logo that they've had?
They should have to. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, they should write that into the game, like to the contract before the game. That'd be pretty interesting. All right, Zach, let's talk about the Texas Longhorns specifically a little bit. I've got a series of questions here and keys and updates. We can kind of go through these. First question, first talking point, what the heck happened in Arlington? We don't have to talk about this for too long. It was sad. It was a long time ago. It was painful. Texas had a chance to host. I mean, we both thought that 2 wins gives them a pretty decent shot. We don't exactly know how it would have worked out. The committee leaned super heavily on RPI, even more than usual this year. So maybe even with 2 wins, maybe Texas would not have had the RPI necessary, but we will never know because Texas went 0-2. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Kansas State. That was it. They were back home very early in the day on Thursday. Zach, what were your overall thoughts on these 2 games? Anything specific you want to point out with these 2 losses? And just we can never go back to Globe Life Field, right? It can't happen.
Yeah, Lucas Gordon was the only one that someone kind of jokingly said, I don't think that field likes us very much. Yeah, I mean, what a beating Globe Life has been. The Kansas game, it was just like what we saw against Lucas Gordon in the first. Kansas came looking to hit every single pitch the first time. They were looking for first pitch fastball, which kind of makes you think, like, why didn't Lucas maybe go to first pitch changeup or start trying to like pitch backwards? But I mean, Kansas was just barreling balls. That's all there was to it. And they faced Bumgarner. Bumgarner was a really good guy. So So yeah, Skip Johnson was right. Maybe he is one of the best pitchers in the Big 12. Texas seen him twice and has not done well. The thing for me was I just felt like Texas kind of let their guard down and wasn't prepared to play. Like, as bad as it sounds, they just weren't very competitive in their at bats. They had such a high of emotion and such a high level that they played against West Virginia. You could almost feel it coming a mile away. Like, oh man, this is going to be a letdown. Like, you see that team peak, and all of a sudden you're going to come back and it's going to be a crash to earth. And I think it would have been okay if they'd won game one. I think they could have muddled through, but losing game one, I think, just took everything out of them. They were just like, this is it. Like, there's no point in us being here. Let's get home. Let's get rested up. Peyton Powell's dealing with the back tweak. Jared Thomas dealing with the back tweak. We've lost 2 pitchers now, a third to the transfer portal. They were just like, we're done. Like, let's get the hell out of here. Let's go home, sleep in our bed, and regroup. We asked Coach Pierce during media availability, like, what was the flip? The flip of the switch. Y'all looked like world beaters against West Virginia, and you couldn't put competitive at bats against anyone in Arlington. He didn't really have an answer. It was just, we didn't have a lot of time to prepare, and we didn't have the energy. And it's kind of what you saw from this team. Honestly, when I think back to it last year, they spent all of their energy beating East Carolina to get to Omaha. They got to Omaha and they just had nothing. They had nothing in the tank. So yeah, I don't know what that means for the regional. I don't know if they come back and they're just like ready to rock and they have got that edge about them, or if like this season is just on the rails at this point. It could go either way.
I hate to think of that like as a trend that we've seen in the last couple of years, though, because I mean, that really is pretty disappointing. Because if you just think about it, you're going to Omaha, like, even regardless of how difficult the super regional was, you should be able to get up for Omaha. Maybe the pitchers are a little gassed because they had to work really hard, but you would think the team as a whole is able to get up for Omaha. And then this year, you have an emotional high against West Virginia, you sweep them, you win the conference, all that. But then, you're on the bubble of hosting going into Arlington. So it's like, why is there a letdown if, there is still a lot to play for? At the end of the day, man, it's just hard to replicate. It could have gone one of two ways. I thought maybe that Texas would go into the Big 12 tournament with the bats being so hot that the momentum would just carry them through. But the other side was maybe they lost the edge. They felt the success there. They don't have that fire under them. And that was kind of, it's we don't exactly know exactly how they were feeling going into the games, but that's how they played. They played like a team with not as much of an edge. I will say Lucas Gordon, he did fine. He still went 5 innings, only allowed 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. LeBaron Johnson Jr., he didn't really have his A+ stuff yet again, but it was a very good outing by him. He went 6 innings, 2 earned runs. So both Lucas Gordon and LBJ gave them a chance to win, even without their best stuff. But like I said earlier, they're going to have to be way better. If Texas is going to get out of this regional, they are going to have to go 7-8 innings, pretty much dominating, which they're capable of doing, which they've both done throughout the year. So yeah, it was definitely a disappointing tournament for sure. But Zach, we do need to talk about the injuries and the other stuff a little bit more. Just a quick update here. DJ Burke, no longer on the team. He is in the transfer portal. Don't have too many details at this time, but he is no longer available to pitch innings. He's no longer on the team. David Shaw, we saw him exit that game against Kansas State with an arm injury. We believe he is no longer available for the year, correct?
Yep, for the year.
Yeah. Heston Toll also out for the year with an injury that we are not quite sure what the injury is, but he is not available for the rest of the year. You mentioned it, Jared Thomas and Peyton Powell. They both seem to be dealing with back issues during the Big 12 tournament. Sounds like they're both fine now. They got to take advantage of some extra rest. So both those guys will be fine. But Zach, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about us recording this show 5 or 6 weeks ago. Maybe it was after OU. And we were talking about, maybe it was after Oklahoma State. We were talking about, what should Texas do with this bullpen? Zay Morehouse, maybe he's not the closer anymore. Who should be the high leverage guys? How should Texas manage his staff? And my solution was, I think the high leverage guys going forward need to be DJ Burke, David Shaw, and Heston Toll. Zach, those 3 guys they're no longer available to pitch. I think that is that just tells you how big of a loss those three guys are. When we were thinking, those have been the three guys, that you are kind of comfortable throwing into some of these bigger spots and what has been a tough bullpen year for Texas. Now those three guys are gone. Travis Staley will definitely be available out of the bullpen. He's going to be a hybrid, long relief guy, high leverage guy, and then potential fourth starter if somehow it gets to there. So you definitely can expect to see Travis Staley in the first big relief situation. But after that, man, it's going to be Zane Morehouse. It's going to be Ace Whitehead. It's going to be Charlie Hurley, and it's going to be Andre Duplantier. It's pretty thin, man. I mean, that group, they've all had their ups. They've all had their downs. After that, it's pretty thin, but that's going to be how it is. Zane Morehouse is going to have to get gigantic outs in this regional. Charlie Hurley is going to have to get gigantic outs in this regional. Ace Whitehead is going to have to come in and get a big lefty-lefty matchup in a big spot against Miami or against Louisiana. That's the reality of the situation. That all those guys have had success and they've all had times where they've struggled. So it's just going to be, are those guys going to be able to come up big in these big spots? But it is thin without Burke, Shaw, and Toll back there.
Yeah, it really is. And, Coach Pierce was very, I think, realistic about, look, he and Woody have to go figure out how they pair up relievers with the starters this week. That's their entire goal, is to figure out who's the guy and where they pair up. Because if you think about the innings, right, like you said, Andre Duplantier, Cody Howard maybe can mix in. He's a true, not a true freshman, a redshirt freshman. Charlie Hurley, Coach Pierce talked about him. Like, he's got to come in, and he's a guy that can eat innings potentially, but he's got to keep it over the plate. He's got to be solid. Whitehead and Loomis are your two left-handed pitchers at this point, right? You're not going to go to Walbridge. He didn't even mention Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart may have to factor in more, but, he's still been a work in progress. And so, yeah, it's, Travis Staley's in the big spot, I think, based on what I've seen, what I've heard. And then, yeah, they're still looking at Zane Morehouse. Coach Pierce did say that Morehouse and Duplantier both had really good outings this past week. Look, that's great. Like, it's the inner squad. They've got to go prove that in the game, though. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And then you got a guy like Kobe Minchie, can he potentially factor in, get you an inning, 2 innings here or there, utilize that big fastball of his and the improving changeup? Yeah, you hope so.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about how Texas might deploy the pitching staff, because I know, when the media was talking to David Pierce yesterday, he mentioned they don't know yet if they're going to go with Lucas Gordon game 1 or if they're going to go with LeBaron Johnson Jr. game 1. I looked into it, the Louisiana lineup and the Miami lineup, they're both very balanced between how many right-handed hitters and left-handed hitters they run out there. So no real big thing that jumped off the page there for me. What did jump off the page is Louisiana is kind of more of a small ball team. They want to get on base and they want to run, while Miami is more of a, we're 9th in the entire country in homers. We are going to slug you to death. So when I think about those kind of two juxtapositions there between the Louisiana offense and the Miami offense, my brain naturally goes towards, let's put Lucas Gordon on the mound against Louisiana, against the team that wants to run, because Lucas Gordon is a left-handed pitcher. He can control the running game really well. And if they want to play small ball, he can hop off the mound. He can pitch to contact really well. So my mind immediately was thinking they go with Lucas Gordon in game 1, and then you run LBJ out there against a team that wants to slug. LBJ's a tough guy to slug against when he's got that fastball going to the bottom of the zone with the slider, with the occasional splitter. We don't know how they're going to do it. They haven't announced anything yet, but that was what makes sense to me. You have any thoughts there on those first couple of games and how they might play this?
Yeah, it was interesting that Pierce mentioned that. In talking to Lucas, I didn't get the sense that he was not wanting to go game 1, right? Like, because we asked him, hey, you ended the season or kind of a day early, right? You got moved forward, then you got moved back. You've been moved all over. And he was like, yeah, I threw Friday, which I thought was very telling, right? Like, even if Pierce decides eventually to move him back and forth, because he has had good rest, like, it's not really an issue of rest at this point. Lucas said, I pitched on Friday because that's my day. Like, that's getting back to my pitching routine. To some extent, I would argue that you go with Gordon game 1, just because, again, it comes down to routine. And if Gordon's most or at his best in a routine, you put him in the best place to be successful. Because as a coach, sometimes you have to put guys maybe out of their comfort zone, but you also have to take into account if they are successful in a certain position in a certain way on a certain day, that's when you throw them, right? Because you've got to give the team, you can't look at it always just as a individual piece. At the same time, you got to look at who gives up more home runs or has potential to get hit harder. Is it LBJ pitching and attacking low in the zone, occasionally leaving one up? Or is it a more soft tossing lefty? Right? I don't have all the splits and reverse splits on Miami at the moment, but that's something they got to look at because Miami's ballpark isn't huge. It's 330 down the line, 365 to the gaps, and 400 straight away. So they're not sitting at Dish-Falk Field where they can hammer them into the gaps. So yeah, I don't know. Pierce has quite the conundrum on his plate. If it's me for a day, right? If I'm sitting in Pierce's shoes, I think I probably go with Gino game 1 because you know what you're going to get more consistently with him. And then you think upside, I'm going to go with LBJ and I'm just going to let him go loose for 6 innings against potential Miami, right?
Yeah.
If you look at their FIP and their XFIP and their Sierras, the numbers kind of tell you the same. LBJ has better numbers. Now he's obviously pitched a lot of innings and a lot fewer, big names, but I think you stick with your Friday, Saturday rotation.
Yeah, no, I think so too. We're in agreement there. I think for me, it just comes down to Louisiana really wants to run and be active on the bases. And I would much rather have Lucas Gordon on the mound against a team like that.
Yeah.
We will see how that works out. They're both obviously dominant, top of the Big 12 type of arms. Let's talk a little bit about Tanner Witt. He did not get to throw in the Big 12 tournament because Texas did go 0-2. We found out he did pitch in a scrimmage on Saturday. He went 3 1/3. He threw 45 pitches. David Pierce said he could potentially go 60 to 65 pitches for the regional. That would be pretty big. Zach, I think one question a lot of fans are probably going to have is if Texas has to win these first 2 games and the bullpen is thin, could they potentially use Tanner Witt out of the bullpen, which I think we are both in agreement that is likely not to happen just because he's coming off Tommy John. He's in a routine where he wants to throw a lot of pitches and they want to be able to control his outings. Did you get any type of sense to where they're thin in the bullpen and they have to win a game 1 or a game 2 that they could potentially do that? Or you think it's still, stick to the plan?
I think Pierce is going to stick to a plan that him, Tanner Witt, Witt's father and family,
the trainers.
The trainer, I think they're sticking to the plan no matter what. They for all of the things that go on in college athletics and athletics in general, where the kid is not the number one priority. Look, the newest list came out today. Tanner's up there at 41 overall in the MLB prospect list. I think they're sticking to the plan, and it doesn't matter what happens at Texas. It's 2 completely independent variables, and they're sticking to the plan. So,
yeah. No, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, if he is available for 60 to 65 pitches, that'll be huge if he's able to get a potential game 3 start, because if he's being efficient, that is potentially 5 innings, 5+ if things go really, really well, which would be massive for a team that we know needs its starters to eat innings. But yeah, Zach, I think when we talked about it a bunch of times now. If Texas is going to get out of this regional, I think it's going to have to be because they went 3-0. I just don't see, with the current state of the pitching staff and the lack of depth, that if they lose a game 1, or even if they, win the first game and then lose to Miami in game 2, I don't think they're going to come back and win 3 games in a row and beat Miami back to back and just be able to outslug them, just because Miami's going to have such an advantage on the mound at that point. I think Texas could go 3-0. I'm not going to be shocked if they go 3-0. I'm not going to be shocked if they go 0-2. I've kind of talked about that on Orange Bloods, but they're favored in game 1, obviously, with Lucas Gordon on the mound. If you get to game 2 with LeBaron Johnson Jr. on the mound, if you're thinking of like a Vegas betting perspective, they'll probably be slight underdogs, but it's not going to be more than plus 130, plus 140. It's going to be almost a pick'em game with LeBaron Johnson Jr. on the mound. So you think about that, you've got to kind of be comfortable with Texas' chances. But I just think if they're going to get through this, it's going to have to be because they went 3-0. And I think a big part of that, it's going to have to be the offense, man. They're going to have to get the pitchers a lead, because both of these pitchers, they thrive when they've got a lead. They can attack the zone freely. And we know what the Texas offense is capable of. And if this team is going to make it out of a regional on the road, they've got to perform, up to their ceiling, with Jared Thomas hitting like he has been, Dylan Campbell extending that hitting streak, into the upper 30s. they're going to have to do all the things that the offense that has made the offense successful, pretty much throughout the season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds like Powell and JT did sit pretty much all week.
Yep.
They were back up in the cages on Monday, and they were batting twice that day, right? And then it sounds like that rest was really big for them. It sounded like, hey, we needed to sit these guys down. They've just been at it. It sounded like Powell's was more of a just kind of a intensity tweak, and necessarily like there's actually something problematically wrong there. Sounded like JT's was more of an actual, like, I just, I swung through hard and tweaked my oblique kind of deal. So sounds like both of them are fine. Yeah, something to watch. And definitely, as you mentioned, if you're able to go 3-0, all the better. If they have to try to fight through the losers bracket, I don't give them any chance. If they can win the first one, at that point, I probably give everything to Miami. But Miami doesn't have a ton of depth either on their pitching staff. And so it starts to get real dicey real quick. So who can outslug the other one?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big one. All right, let's make some picks here. We are going to first make our picks for the Coral Gables regional. And then we've got the full bracket, Zach. Let's go ahead and, this will be tough. We're not going to get it exactly right, but let's go ahead and make our picks for Omaha now that the bracket is out. But starting in Coral Gables, Zach, I have been wrong many times. Let's hope I'm wrong again. I'm picking Miami to win this regional. I was really high on Texas the past couple of weeks, but it's not just that they didn't play well in the Big 12 tournament. One of those games was at 9 a.m. Arlington has been weird. The conference tournaments can be weird in general. It's about the injuries. It's not about how they played. It's just about the injuries for me. Losing Tanner Carlson, he was really solidifying himself in that DH spot. The lineup was a lot deeper when he was in there. And then DJ Burke doesn't work out for him at Texas. He's in the portal. David Shaw out, Heston Toll out. The pitching staff is so thin to where even if, I think Texas wins game one. I trust Lucas Gordon against Lafayette. And then you think about LeBaron Johnson Jr. against Miami in game two. I expect him to pitch well. I'm picturing like a LeBaron Johnson Jr. goes 6 1/3, 6 2/3. Leaves the game. Maybe the game is tied like 2-2. And then at that point, it's going to be Andrew Walters against what's left of the Texas bullpen. And it would just be disingenuous for me not to pick Miami in that sort of scenario. And then if Texas gets in the losers bracket, we're both in agreement that it's going to be tough to come out of it from there. So I'm going to go with Miami. I just think a guy like Andrew Walters, there is not a weapon that can be, a red hot, an ace pitcher. You've got a slugger like Ivan Melendez going on a heater. I do not know if there's anything more valuable than a super reliever that can give you 2 to 3 to 4 innings multiple times in one regional that is simply not going to give up hits or runs. So I'm not picking against Walters. I'm not picking against Miami. And it's mainly just because of these injuries, man. I think it was just bad timing with some of the injuries to this Texas pitching staff.
Yeah, I went with Miami as well. The combination of Yo-Yo Morales and Walters is just far too much. Like those two guys, Morales is up to 17 overall prospect in the MLB draft this year. There's a reason he's way up there on the list of all-time hitters at Miami. And we've seen what Walters has done, what he can do, and how he's just gotten better and better and better every single year. But again, if you look at it from a Texas perspective overall, it's just pitching depth purely. Can they have enough depth to pitch? And I don't think they can.
Yep. All right. No, I mean, I think it's fair. Hopefully they prove us wrong. We will see how that goes. Zach, do you have the entire bracket pulled up? Are you ready to make these Omaha picks?
I do have my Omaha picks in front of me.
All right. I'm going to start with the Wake Forest, Alabama quadrants. I'm not going to get cute. Zach, the number 1 overall seed, what's the stat there? They haven't won the whole thing, or they haven't even been to Omaha in how many years? It's been tough for the number 1 overall seed lately.
They have not. The number 1 overall seed has not won the title since 2001 when the Miami Hurricanes last won it.
There it is. Well, this year it'll be up to Wake Forest, the absolutely dominant slugging team that can really pitch it too out of the ACC. They're number 1. I'm going to pick Wake Forest to win their regional. I'm going to pick Boston College to beat Alabama. I think all this Alabama team of destiny stuff, I think it runs out of magic. I'm kind of buying the ACC a little bit here. I'm going to go with Boston College, and then I'm gonna pick Wake Forest. You know, I think they get to Omaha and the number 1 seed overall stuff gets interesting. So what do you have there in those couple of regionals, and what team you have coming to Omaha?
Well, I'm afraid you picked my bracket, or got a screenshot or something, because
Yeah,
I also picked Wake Forest and Boston College to make it, and
there
then
you
Wake
go.
Forest went on to Omaha. I think Boston College is a team that probably was on the verge of being worthy of a host.
They were close. Yeah.
Alabama, it's great. I'm glad y'all won the money line bets for a while, and y'all continue to do it. But if you look at the team makeup, they haven't been amazing against a bunch of teams. And so I worry that they're going to get into a regional format and just kind of, it's too much. Now they are playing in Tuscaloosa, which gives them a home advantage, but Troy's a really solid team. Nicholls State is a team that's beaten LSU in a midweek game. And then you got Boston College, who's been solid. So, you factor all that in. I think there's a lot of parity this year, so I'm going to go with Boston College. But yeah, Wake Forest is a team. I think, they got Rhett Lauder. They've got guys that can absolutely smash the ball. It's a very complimentary team that has a lot of pieces built for a run.
So you're going with Wake over Boston College?
Yeah, Wake over Boston College.
All right. So I think, one thing we didn't mention at the top, with the overall bracket, the SEC, they got 8 of the 16 hosts. They're not going 8-0, right? One of these teams is getting upset. So I'm going to say Alabama drops it. But yeah, all right. So we both got Wake Forest making it there. Moving down to the 8-9 part of the matchup. It is important to mention, we joked about it. Zach and I, we kept these picks separate from each other. I do not know who he's picking. He does not know who I am picking. We both picked Miami, which we just said, a couple minutes ago. Then you look at the other regional, the Stanford regional. You got Stanford, San Jose State, Texas A&M, and Cal State Fullerton. Texas played 3 of those teams this year. I'm going with the Aggies. I don't know. I don't think Stanford gets it done this year. I'm going to go with the Aggies. They were able to make a good run in the SEC tournament. They're coming in pretty hot. The pitching staff has been a lot better lately. I am going with A&M over Stanford, and then we're looking at Miami versus A&M potentially. I'm going to go with A&M. I don't know why. I hate to do it. I'm just going to torture myself. I think A&M is going to end up in Omaha.
So seriously, I'm pretty sure you stole my bracket at this point.
You have it too? Yeah, I was worried. I mean, it's almost like we do a college baseball show, 3 months together.
Yeah. So, here's the thing. Cal State Fulton, we saw them out in Cal State. Solid team. They're defensive. I don't think that they can get past A&M. I think A&M's pitching, which has been unlocked recently, whatever Schlossnagel and the team are doing over there is working, right? Their pitching is unhinged lately. The thing about Stanford that I think they have a good chance of coming out of their regional. Their home crowd is just abomination of that no one shows up. San Jose State's not going to really add to that. Now, Cal State Fulton will travel, but I feel like Texas A&M is going to roll in there with a bunch of rowdy folks, and they're going to be ready to make a bunch of noise. And, the Rednecks are not going to play well in California, and they're just going to own that regional. I also watched Stanford against Texas Tech. I saw Stanford, what they did against Oklahoma. I just don't believe that they're a super elite team like I maybe thought they were at the beginning of the year. Braden Montgomery is really, really good. Tommy Troy, really, really good. But I don't think they have the same pieces that they've had in years past. And so, yeah, I picked Miami or Texas A&M to come out of that regional. And then it's all about how you're playing at the end of the year. And Texas A&M has looked pretty good. They can hit the ball. I think they match up really well with Miami. And so if they continue doing what they've been doing, I don't see why A&M can't end up in the College World Series, which pains me to say.
Yeah. All right. So we both got Wake Forest and A&M so far. I think this next part is pretty interesting. I am going to move now to the LSU Kentucky section of the bracket. We've got the LSU regional. They're playing Tulane in game 1. Tulane, absolute garbage all year. And then they win their conference tournament. One of the worst teams record-wise, I think, to ever make the tournament. That's pretty incredible. Also in the LSU regional, we've got Oregon State. We've got Sam Houston State. Zach, we talked about it. We mentioned it a couple of times. The LSU pitching staff has been kind of up and down this year. There's been times where it's been Paul Skeens and then everyone else. Thatcher Hurd, he's been pitching better lately. LSU's at home. We know what the environment is going to be like there. We know that the LSU doesn't have that much depth. Oregon State, those Pac-12 teams can swing it a little bit. I'm going with LSU. And then, man, this next one, I'm not going to lie. This next one was just, I don't even know what to do. We got Kentucky, Ball State, West Virginia, Indiana. West Virginia was ranked number 6 in the country 2 weeks ago. They got swept in Austin. They had a bad showing in the Big 12 tournament. Kentucky is just SEC RPI merchants. I mean, their RPI has been through the roof. They've been middle of the pack when it comes to actually winning games. Indiana was not expected to be great this year. They played Texas pretty well and then went on to have a pretty successful season. Zach, we've got to pick some upsets somewhere. I'm going with LSU, and then I'm going to go with Indiana to come out of that one, just kind of as a wild card team. And then I'm going to pick LSU against Indiana.
Yeah. So I went with LSU.
Yep.
Tulane's 19-40. They've already lost to LSU once this season by like 11-5. Sam Houston State, I think they're actually a pretty solid team for a mid-major. They also lost to LSU earlier this year by a score of 13-5 up in Round Rock at the Carbach Classic. Now, granted, that was the very beginning of the year, right?
Yep.
But the only competition is Oregon State. And can Oregon State beat LSU twice? I don't think they can. I think Schemes will go game 2.
Yep, definitely.
I think he'll dominate. And then Thatcher Hurd's been really good recently. I think LSU is ready to make a run. They've got the offense poised to do so. And I think Oregon State's got some really good pieces. And I would not, this is one of those things where, of course, I'm caveating, but if Oregon State were to upset LSU, I would turn around and go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I think it does, but I'm not going to pick against them, right? I'm not going to pick against the Bayou Bengals down at LSU. So, yeah, I'm going with LSU. And then this Lexington matchup, it's a difficult one.
Did you see the logistical stuff? Did you see the logistical stuff with Lexington?
So that's where I was going with this, right?
Yeah.
So Kentucky is apparently hosting some massive country music festival at the same time. They've got the Kentucky State baseball, softball, I think track and field all at the same time. There's 0 hotels. So if you want to stay near Lexington, well, you're gonna have to drive an hour plus. The teams, Ball State, Indiana, West Virginia, are paying to stay in the freshman dorms. $92.50 a night. Insanity.
This was a long con by the state of Kentucky. They've been planning this for years.
So just the fact that, you're going to have these guys staying in beds that are built for, a 5'10" freshman. I think Ball State could very well upset Kentucky in game 1. I think they're that good of a team. I think Indiana could definitely beat West Virginia if they play right. But the home cooking, man, I'm just going to go with Kentucky. I don't know what to expect out of this regional other than potential fireworks. Let's just get it going crazy. But I'll go with Kentucky. I think it's a safe bet. And then I have LSU beating Kentucky because there's no way that they're going to beat them again. So yeah.
All righty, so we're in agreement there. I've got LSU beating Indiana. Zach has LSU beating Kentucky. That Kentucky one is by far the most potential for chaos and randomness, and I just don't know what's going to happen there. All right, let's move down to the bottom half of this bracket. We've got Auburn. They are hosting Penn, Southern Miss, and Samford. And then we've got Clemson as the 4 seed. I'm excited about this one. Clemson red hot. The 2 seed there is Tennessee. Also, there is Charlotte and Lipscomb there. Top half, I think I am going with Auburn. I'm going to go with Auburn. They're playing pretty well. I'm not going to pick against that many SEC teams. Bottom half of the bracket. Man, this is a fun one. If you have been listening to me all year, you might know where I'm going with this one. I don't know why. I just can't quit this Tennessee team with Chase Tolander and Chase Burns and some of these other guys that are running out there. Clemson is red hot. I know Clemson might be the hottest team in the country. They've got the home field. That place is going to be rocking. I can't quit Tennessee. I can't quit Chase Tolander. So I'm going to go with Auburn versus Tennessee. I'm just going to pick Tennessee to make it to Omaha. I don't know why. I'm just doing it.
Yeah, so in the Auburn regional, I'm actually picking Southern Miss. I'm a huge believer in Tanner Hall. I think Southern Miss has just got that gritty team. I don't really believe in Auburn. They've won some games. I just don't think they're as good as their record maybe suggests. For me, it's all about game 1. If Southern Miss can get past Samford, which I think they can, but Samford's a decent team, I think Southern Miss saves Tanner Hall for Auburn. I think they can pull it off. So I've got the upset there. And the Clemson regional, man, I'm torn on this because this is a regional of just absolute chaos. Clemson is one of the hottest teams in the nation, as you mentioned it. Tennessee's got Dolander, Beam, Burns. They've got all the pitching names, right? Can they do it? They haven't looked very good at times.
Yeah.
They've looked really bad at times. And so as much as I want to pick Tennessee, and I think Tennessee will come out of this, I'm going to go with Clemson just because the hot, cold, hot theory. Shout out to Dimitri and my boy Ben. But Clemson is hot at the right time of the year, just like A&M, right? I'm following the trends. So I'll go with Clemson. But the team that really could make some noise, I think, is actually Charlotte. They're a team that's really good. I think they could give Tennessee some noise in the first game. And if they do, hey, that'd be a fun matchup between Clemson and Charlotte because Charlotte can hit the ball really, really well. So, yeah, I've got Clemson and Southern Miss coming out of here, get out of that SEC bias. And, but yeah, Tennessee could very well come out of this thing. They could just absolutely shut down Clemson's hitting, but it'll be fun to watch.
Who are you going with to make it to Omaha between Clemson and Southern Miss?
I'll stick with Clemson. I think they're going to run it to Omaha and fade.
Nice. All righty, there it is. We will go to the top right part of the bracket now. We've got Florida as the number 2 overall. They are hosting UConn. Texas Tech is going to be in Gainesville, as will Florida A&M. Not giving Florida A&M too much of a shot there. And then if you look at the other side, you've got South Carolina hosting as the 15 seed, another SEC team getting a host. They are hosting Campbell, perhaps the team that got screwed the most out of not hosting. You also have North Carolina State there. They always are interesting in this time of the year. I am definitely not picking against Florida. I love this Florida team. The crowd there will be pretty solid. Jack Kaggs, some of their other pitchers. I really like that Florida team. The bottom half was tough, man, because NC State, I like these ACC teams. They're always intriguing. They always make some noise. Campbell, something to prove. They think they should be hosting South Carolina, not the other way around. South Carolina, they've had some dynamic freshmen this year, but the wins always haven't been there against the quality opponents. I am going with Florida against South Carolina. I think Campbell tries to make it interesting, and I think that narrative ultimately falls short. And then I'm picking Florida to make it to Omaha for sure.
Yeah, I have Florida over Texas Tech in that Gainesville regional. I just don't believe in Connecticut and those Northeast teams most of the time. So Florida advancing past Texas Tech. And then, South Carolina is an enigma, man. They looked really, really good. They've had a lot of injuries. When they're right, they're the best team in the nation, in my opinion. They've done it. They've shown it. I think they got really soft regional, to be honest. I don't think NC State's all that special. I think Campbell beats NC State. I just don't know that Campbell can beat South Carolina twice.
Yep.
Would I be surprised if it happens? Absolutely not. But I'm going to go with South Carolina and then Florida beating South Carolina with relatively ease in the super regional. So I think Florida's just a very, very complete team.
Yeah, I think we both like Florida quite a bit. We are in agreement there on that part of the bracket. The 10 seed overall, that is Coastal Carolina. They've got Rider, they've got Duke, they've got UNC Wilmington. Zach, nothing really pops out there for me. Duke has been pretty dangerous this year. Coastal, that environment's going to be crazy. I'm going to go with Coastal in that one. And then on the bottom half, this was a pretty interesting one, I thought. We got Virginia, ECU. We know they've got a veteran team. Oklahoma, they were one of the last teams into the tournament. Oklahoma gets in, Kansas State does not. Oklahoma, they played pretty well in the Big 12 tournament. They're trying to turn it around a little bit with their pitching like they did late in the season last year. I'm not going to pick against Virginia. I'm going to go with Virginia, and then I'm going to go with Coastal Carolina. And then from there, man, this is a toss-up. I'll go with the home team. I'll go with Virginia going to Omaha.
Yeah. In the Conway regional, which is Coastal Carolina, I have Coastal coming out of that. I just don't think Duke's good enough. I actually think UNC Wilmington could beat Duke very easily and be the runner-up. I saw what UNC Wilmington did to TCU earlier in the season, and I'm a big believer in the way they play ball. Coastal Carolina can hit the ball, and they're never out of the game, right? If you need 7 runs in the 7th inning, they will give you that. And they've picked up some big wins. If you look at them, they've beaten Creighton. They've beaten Wake Forest, number 1 overall. They beat Campbell, beat North Carolina. They got beat up by Clemson. They split a 2 series with Campbell. They've beaten Southern Miss. They've beaten Louisiana. They've gotten some good wins, right? But I just don't see them making it to Omaha. And so out of the Charlottesville regional, I do have Virginia coming out. I'm a big believer in Getloff and Teal. I think those two guys are just lights out. I think East Carolina is going to make a really good battle out of that. I just don't know that East Carolina has quite enough to get past Virginia. I think Virginia is a little bit better. But I did see East Carolina in person last year, and I'm a big believer what Godwin's got going on down there. But yeah, give me Virginia making it to the CWS.
Alrighty, so we've been in agreement way too much. We were picking way too many favorites. Our picks are definitely going to go up in flames. Speaking of picking favorites, this next half of the bracket, I don't know, man. I mean, Vanderbilt. I'm picking Vanderbilt. We've been pretty high on Vanderbilt all year. They've had their ups and downs. They definitely had a bit of a lull towards the end of the year where they dropped from like the number 2, number 3 team. They're coming in as the number 6 overall seed. They're hosting Oregon. They're hosting Xavier. They're hosting Eastern Illinois. I'm still going to go with Vanderbilt at home. Too much experience. Tim Corbin, Enrique Bradfield. Some of the pitchers are coming on strong. They won the SEC conference tournament, so they're coming in hot. I'm going to go with Vanderbilt. And then, man, Oklahoma State, the lone Big 12 host. They're hosting Oral Roberts. They're hosting DBU, who we know was on the hosting bubble there for a while. And they're hosting Washington, a team that has made some noise in the Pac-12. I've seen some people consider this one of the more wide open regionals. I am going to go with Oklahoma State just because I like some of their sluggers. I like that Nolan McLean has been stretched out a little bit as a pitcher. Jaron Watts-Brown, he's kind of a big game guy that I think he will probably be able to come through. I could see that one going any direction, but I'm going to go with Vanderbilt over Oklahoma State to make it to Omaha.
This was one of those ones where it's dangerous, right? Oral Roberts has beat Oklahoma State twice this season. Now, granted, those are both midweek games, but they beat them May 2nd. That's not that long ago. The other game was back in April. Now they were both close games, but Oral Roberts has a solid team. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma State twice. Dallas Baptist is a solid club. They played twice against Oklahoma State in the midweeks. They got absolutely murdered in the first game by a score. I think it was 20-4. And then Oklahoma State got shut out 0-8 in the second game in Dallas. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at this regional in general, I think, one that's the toughest regional outside maybe the Stanford regional. I think you just have 3 really good teams that are all bunched together. Part of me really wants to pick Oral Roberts.
Yeah,
because I just want to see the electric 4 seed come out of nowhere, which I mentioned earlier in the podcast. But I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. They're playing a really solid game of baseball right now. I think Holiday has some working aspects to, hey, look what we did in the Big 12 tournament. Let's go match that intensity. And if they match the intensity, they're better than all 3 of the other teams.
Yep.
And so for me, I have Oklahoma State coming out of Stillwater. And then I don't believe in any of the teams, especially Oregon as a 2 seed. I think that's farce and the national regional. So I have Vanderbilt coming out. I think Vanderbilt is just better than Oklahoma State. I think they're going to sweep them 2-0 and sweep Super Regional. And I think it's Vanderbilt back to the College World Series again, as we have seen time and time again.
I'd be pretty interested in the Vanderbilt Oklahoma State regional. I think that would be fun. Oklahoma State has some guys that can at least make it interesting, make some noise there.
For sure.
All right, last little quadrant here. Indiana State, they are a host. They are hosting Wright State, Iowa, and North Carolina. Zach, Indiana State, these tiny schools, they're just going to have to prove it to me. They're going to have to earn my respect. I'm sorry. I know that's probably wrong of me. I'm going with the Hawkeyes. I'm going with the Big Ten team. And then this bottom half, I think this one's pretty fun. I mean, you got Arkansas as the host, as they almost always are. Super solid year by Dave Van Horn, and Arkansas is coming on strong. We know all about Hagen Smith. They've got Hunter Holland, who's been really good for them as another left-handed arm. TCU, red hot, won the Big 12 tournament. They're swinging a hot bat right now. They're not going to be afraid to go into that type of environment there in Fayetteville. And then Arizona, just saw the viral video. One of the last teams in the tournament, they went crazy. They did not know if they were getting in or not. They're playing, they were given some extra life, and now they get to go to Arkansas and make some noise. I'm not going to pick against Arkansas, but I'm not going to be surprised if TCU somehow squeaks out of there. So I'm going to go with Arkansas over Iowa to complete my very chalky bracket of Omaha teams.
Yeah, going back to the Terre Haute regional with Indiana State, Wright State, North Carolina, Iowa, I feel like that's one of those regionals where someone could just go crazy and come out of nowhere. Sure, Indiana State very well may just run roughshod over them, but I don't see Indiana State being better than both Iowa and North Carolina. So it comes down to me, it's like, can they beat them twice? No, I'm going to go with Iowa. That's just purely just thumb in the air. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I want the Big Ten team because why not? North Carolina has the pieces. They've just been really wishy-washy, so I don't see it. And then the Fayetteville regional, which I believe Greg Swindell is going to be calling. And then Keith Moreland's going to be in the Oklahoma State regional.
Nice.
But Swindell is excited to go see Baum Walker Stadium, and I have Arkansas coming out of it. I think one of the most intriguing games of the regionals in the first round, though, is Arizona TCU. Chase Davis is electric. That guy can hit the ball a mile. TCU's playing exactly how we expected to see them at the beginning of the year. So again, you go cold, hot, or hot, cold, hot theory. They were really hot. They looked like in Arlington the best team in the nation at the beginning of the season. They look like one of the best teams in the nation at the end of the season. So I would not be surprised if TCU comes out of it. But Arkansas's injuries, how do they get past that from an injury standpoint? Do they have the depth? I think they do. And I think they can get past TCU, which means I definitely have them going past Iowa. But whoever comes out of the Fayetteville, whether it's Arkansas or TCU, is going to end up in Omaha. Yeah,
we're in agreement there. I definitely like that regional more than the Indiana State one. All right, Zach, this has been a long, productive show. We've given analysis. We've talked about the bracket. We've given our picks. We've talked about Texas. We've talked about Louisiana. We talked about Miami. We covered a lot of ground here. I want to tell everyone that is watching on YouTube, please give us a like. That is always nice. That helps us out. Subscribe to the Orange Bloods YouTube channel. Check out orangebloods.com. We are going to, of course, have a lot of content. I'm sure there will be a lot of comments this week on Orange Bloods that will be fun to respond to, fun to track as the game threads and the recaps start to roll out. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we will be updating there. We might even be talking about our picks. You can follow me at Aaron Little OB. You can follow Zach at Zach at the Dish. Once again, check out our sponsor, Pint House Brewing. Get $3 off your Wagyu burger. That is a great deal they've got going on. Zach, got a lot going on. This is probably my favorite college baseball weekend of the year. There's going to be so many games. Break out that second TV, break out the third TV, break out the iPad, fire up ESPN Plus. They've got the Squeeze Play channel. And then you've got Texas 1:00 on Friday against Louisiana. The one thing we didn't talk about, Zach, this is the Miami regional. I'm not wishing this on you because you're going to be there in person, but rain delays, man.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Rain delays are in the cards. I have watched many a Miami regionals get delayed because of rain. So be on the lookout there. If there are delays, we will, of course, be updating everyone on Orange Bloods and on Twitter. But yeah, Zach, I'm ready to get out of here. It's been a great show. I've been hopefully this is not our last show of the year, but if it is, I've had fun talking ball all year with you. And thank you, everyone that have watched and listened to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. With that, Zach, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, just I'm looking at so Miami regional last year was delayed by an entire day. Classic. And looking at the weather, Thursday, half an inch expected, Friday, 3/4 of an inch expected, Saturday, half inch expected, and then Sunday, nothing. It all says scattered thunderstorms though, so maybe it's like right when Walters gets warmed up and he wants to get going, just have to shut him down for an hour and then hey, we don't have to face Walters. But no, it's gonna be rain. Looking forward to Miami. If anyone's out there, give me a shout. We can get up and get some food. So
yeah, maybe my most confident prediction of the weekend above all these actual baseball picks is that Zach ends up spending way more time in the Miami press box than he expects. Maybe that is my main prediction, but hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to watch a lot of good baseball. Hopefully Texas is able to pull out this win and we are back talking about a super regional next weekend. But if we are not, it's been a fun ride this year. And with that, we will get out of here. Hope everyone enjoys the regionals this weekend.
Yep. Have a good one.
Subscribe to the channel. Do it now.